Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. Today, it is Friar Talk Tuesday, a part of America's Finest Sports, which is a San Diego-based covering NFL, NBA, MLB, college football, fantasy football, and, of course, the Padres as well. So today, we're going to be doing a little Padres episode for everyone, and was kind of wondering, hey, what are we going to talk about heading into today? Wasn't a lot of Padres news, just kind of like talking about the lethargic offense, and that was about it. But now we have some news. We had a Tatis press conference today. I think there are a few really important takeaways from this press conference. So overall, Isaac, we could start with maybe the apology side of it first, and then we'll get into the surgery, get into him staying in San Diego, and just kind of the overall what this means for the Padres and what this means for Tatis's future. But in terms of the apology stuff, how are you feeling about Tatis's press conference today?
Of course, I was never gonna hop off the Tatis train. I was always gonna have him be on my good side and everything like that, just because I am a really big fan of his, and I understand that people make mistakes, and um, a lot of the argument was that he's made too many mistakes at this point, that he shouldn't be forgiven, this and that, void his contract. The whole thing of voiding his contract, we all know what would happen. He'd go to the Dodgers, kill us for however many years it is, and he'd end up still becoming an amazing player. But I think a lot of people were just mad. A lot of instant reactions, which is perfectly fine. It's perfectly normal. Everybody does it when it comes to instant reactions. But now that everyone's cooled down and everything, it's time to realize that whether his story is genuine or not. He came back with a story today. Skin infection, started taking it in, I believe, June, tested in July, tested positive late July, appealed it, decided to stop appealing it and start serving his suspension. If that story is true, which everyone's starting to sort of believe it, I kind of believe it also, just because of the things I've seen with Clostebol, whatever it is, being in Trofobin, whatever it is called, in the Dominican, and being in over-the-counter medications. He came out saying that the medication did not come from the Padres medical team, so he did that himself, or somebody got it for him and sent it to him, whatever it is. It is somewhat of a believable story. I'm gonna choose to believe it, just because there is no other story that's been released. So as of right now, I will believe it. But I'm happy. That's all I can really say. I'm really happy that he came out today and had his press conference, because I think it was such a, when is this going to happen? When are you going to talk to us? When are you going to talk to everybody? And he kind of did it all at once. He talked to Seidler earlier this week, I think. He talked to Preller earlier this week. He talked to the team today. He talked to the fans and the press today. I mean, he's been knocking it all out. So he's doing everything right. I'm really happy to see it. This is kind of like the first step to maturity and growing. Just being able to grow as a human being and realize that your mistakes do not define your future. Your mistakes do not define who you are, because you can grow, and you can you can still be everyone's favorite. You still can be loved. It's just a matter of being able to find yourself, and I think he's doing that. So hopefully, also he's getting the surgery. I know that's huge news. I think that is also a big step to showing the Padres, like, I'm committed to being healthy, and I'm committed to performing at my best for the entirety of this contract. I don't want to mess up again. I don't want to, keep creating the risk of injury, I guess I would say. So, I mean, I think it is, in terms of just the apology, I was always going to accept it. Whether as a fan you accept it or not, that's on you. I think you will eventually, when he hits 40 home runs again. But yeah, I was very excited to see that he spoke today, and I was satisfied with the result.
Yeah, and it was interesting because for me, I was kind of going into it, and I like, because it kept coming up. Okay, he's going to talk to AJ Preller at some point. We're going to hear him say something. But I was kind of looking at it where my thought process was, okay, like, is it really going to mean all that much? Like, what is he really going to come out and say? And you brought it up, but you brought it up as kind of like a first kind of like step towards maturity, because if you look at his past, 10 months, 9 months, whatever it is, he's consistently been in, like, maybe not the news, but outside of the steroids, but just a bunch of stuff of like, dude, what are you doing, bro? Like, just so much stuff like that. I know, I think it was Talking Friars posted something about it where it was just like all of the different things, and it was like little things too, but it was just like a bunch of dumb things. And if you read the little things, you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. But if you start adding them all up and you start adding that some of these little things turned into a much bigger issue, um, then it kind of was like, okay, there's some major red flags with Tatis. He basically came out today and said, and I felt like it was a pretty genuine apology. And I don't think I think a lot of people are going to be upset about it. I think that's completely fair. I mean, I get the frustration absolutely, and I'm definitely very frustrated that he's not playing this year as well. But he just kind of took ownership, and that was the part that. And Chase isn't here right now. He might be hopping on later, but that was his big issue with it all. And he brought it up, I think yesterday, and he was like, dude, just take ownership for what you did. Don't be like, oh, it's not my fault. Oh, I didn't mean this happened, that happened. Like he has his explanation. That's one thing. But he also came out and blatantly said, like multiple times, this was my mistake. This is on me. There's no one else to blame but me. He said like 3 or 4 different variations of it. So that's, I think, a good sign. However, I think the biggest kind of side of this whole thing, well, two things, two reasons, because at the end of the day, it's an apology. I honestly doesn't mean that much in my opinion. But the big parts for me are getting surgery, staying in San Diego in the offseason, and now the Padres can move on from this whole deal. Because we talked about it last night. It kind of felt like, I don't know, it kind of felt like there was some frustrations going on with like, all right, dude, what's going on with this? Like, are you like gonna like show that you've grown as a person, or are you just gonna say it? And it feels like he's showing it by listening to the Padres organization, getting the surgery. So I'm very satisfied with that, and I do think that getting the surgery was the right move. And ultimately now, we're probably not going to hear from him for the rest of the year, and that's probably a good thing. We're probably not going to hear about him until spring training, and for the team's sake, they can kind of get their mind off of it.
He's actually going to stick around the team. Yeah, so I personally think that's really good. Just being able to stick around the team and just kind of do what you can, root for them from the sideline because you messed up. You should be around. I truly think when you mess up, you should take ownership. You should stick around and don't run away from everyone. Just acknowledge that you messed up and try and earn everyone's trust again. But if for anyone who doesn't know, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows about it, but to kind of reiterate what AJ Cassavell said, um, started off saying he's sorry. Obviously, he feels like he let a lot of people down. Started then went on to say that he feels like he has lost a lot of love, and he knows he has a lot of love to gain back. But he also acknowledges it's going to be a long process, and that he's basically willing to get that process started. I think the first big thing about this process was getting that surgery. So, I mean, that what Cobra said is kind of my biggest fear too, that I know Bellinger had that same surgery. So it is a very big surgery. And I mean, granted, I think Tatis will be fine, but it is a scary thought just because you already paid him so much money. But he took close. He said he took Clostebol without checking with the team doctors. Tested positive in late July. Like I said earlier, appealed it, stopped appealing it, decided to just start his suspension now, which is really good considering, he should be, even with the surgery, he should be back to start the season next year. So it is huge for the Padres. I think it's a huge step for the organization, huge step for Fernando. I truly don't think he needs approval from the rest of the MLB. He plays for one team, so I really think he only needs approval from the organization and from his fans. I don't think he needs from anyone else. It doesn't really matter what the rest of the baseball world thinks because honestly, he's not theirs. So as long as he's able to gain our love back, perform up to expectations, up to Fernando's expectations, up to our expectations from what we've seen in the past. It's going to prove to, have just been a mistake, just been a bump in the road for Fernando. Every human goes through them. But, I hope it just does end up being that, just a mistake that, both organization wise and player wise, they got over.
So specifically for the surgery, because I agree with you there, but specifically for the surgery, I see some people talking about Cody Bellinger, and we talked about in the past that basically a lot of the reasoning behind Fernando not initially getting the surgery last offseason was that it was like, hey, I don't want to have all this time where I can't swing. Look at what happened to Cody Bellinger is kind of that example. But what do you think about that? Do you think that there's an effect there? Like, I think there could be. I think it's hard for us to tell on the outside. But I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a different case. Like, I don't think that Tatis should be hesitant to get the surgery because Cody Bellinger struggles post surgery, which we don't even know if it's because of the surgery. Like maybe it has a little like aspect to it, but it seems that Cody's more lost to the plate and kind of lost in his head and just kind of more struggling than the surgery has impacted him and changed him. And I don't think it's really like that. I think it was more that Tatis just didn't want to lose an offseason and not swing a bat for as long as he would, which then ultimately ended up happening with the wrist anyways. But do you think that there's a like that he should be hesitant because of Cody Bellinger as an example, or do you think that's kind of like too hard to tell right now for the Padres?
I think in his sake, he shouldn't be. He already got paid. He's fine, no matter what happens with his performance. I mean, in terms of just living up to the contract, and if you are determined to kind of be that player that everyone expects you to be, then yeah, sure, you should be worried because, you know, if you really want to be, and maybe this might be out the window, I hope not, but if you do want to be in the Hall of Fame or you do want to be remembered among some of the baseball stars, some of the baseball legends, then of course that's something you're going to take into consideration. But when you factor in he already got the money and everything, like he didn't have much to worry about. Now, of course, from a fan standpoint, maybe you don't want to hear that. I mean, especially me saying that, I don't like saying that. But from a player standpoint, from a career standpoint, when you get the money, you've done your deed. You've kind of done what you can for yourself. Everything else is kind of just a gift to us fans and the organization. Of course, you want to perform up to expectations, but no trade clause, guaranteed money. I mean, he had it good, so. I don't know what to say in that aspect, but in terms of Cody Bellinger and Fernando, obviously Fernando's got all the talent in the world. So did Cody Bellinger. But this is a generational talent. I never felt like Cody Bellinger was a generational talent. Fernando should be fine. I do think it's going to take time. I do think that, you know, maybe April, May, and June might be kind of tough because any type of big time surgery can be tough to come back from in that period of time. I mean, you see guys come off torn ACLs and it takes them a year it takes them, not in baseball, obviously, you know, you get guys like Ronald Acuna. It's not like football where sometimes in football, it takes a guy a year to be able to, you know, just takes a season and then the next season they're back to who they were. Unless your name is Adrian Peterson, then you break a record the very next year, or you get 9 yards away from breaking a record the very next year. But with major surgeries like this, is more often than not that you see a player struggle than you see a player succeed right away. Though not all these players are Fernando, just like not every running back or whatever it was is AP. So hopefully we get, you know, almost immediate success. But yeah, when you look at it from a player standpoint, no, it shouldn't affect his decision. But when you look at it from a performance standpoint, of course.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that now he's going to have a lot of time to rehab. He basically said he's going to get it as soon as possible, which is really good. He has probably until like what is it, next May, most likely next April, May.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a lot longer than he would have had last offseason because he's already starting a month early and then he ends it like a month later. So he might even he could be ready by spring.
That's what they're saying, that April's still a very realistic timetable.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense then. So yeah, I think that right now, like when we look at the whole situation, him getting the surgery, I think him getting the surgery is a great sign. And we had talked about it before, just in terms of like, is it the best thing? We're like, look, it's kind of hard. Like, it's not really our call. We don't know how he feels. We don't know like how the big of a disagreement it is between the team and him, where the team might be like, hey, yeah, like we're leaning towards surgery, but not a big deal. It seemed like the team really wanted him to get surgery, and he said, look, like I'm buying in. Like I've made mistakes. I'm basically going to own up into it, and I'm going to, you know, kind of listen to you guys from here on out. And it makes a lot of sense too. I mean, look at what they've built around in terms of the roster. Like they go and traded for his boy Juan Soto at the deadline, and then he kind of screwed up the season, where it's almost like, all right, I gotta own up to this. I gotta like, you know, move on and whatnot. So yeah, they also said, oh yeah, that's true. Rapboy says they also said he'd be ready by June about the wrist.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so that's fair. That's why I think like the goal is for him to be ready by the time he's there. Hopefully he's able to be swinging a while before he comes back from suspension too, because that would be a big thing. If he hasn't swung a bat in like 6 months or 8, I don't know how long it'll be, you know, quite a few months, that will be a hard thing because it'll take him about a month to get up to speed in terms of seeing pitches and doing all that kind of stuff. Once he's able to start swinging, then it'll be pretty clear. I mean, that was kind of with the wrist too. Like he started swinging, and then pretty quickly after, like when he started swinging fully, pretty quickly after that, he was like, "All right, he's about to rehab. He's taking pitches," and it like was not that long. So hopefully, but I don't know. I don't really know if I have anything in terms of Tatis about the press conference. Anyone in the chat, is there anything that we didn't really go over about some of the stuff he said?
I mean, I already see a lot of people talking about the Hall of Fame since I brought it up.
About what?
About the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Does the Hall of Fame really matter?
Not
in
baseball
baseball?
Hall of Fame.
In
The baseball Hall of
baseball?
Fame is like known to be a joke because it contradicts itself over and over again. There's guys that aren't in it that, the fact that you have like that Barry Bonds is in it, but Big Poppy's in it, and like other guys that are known steroid users are in it, it's kind of become a joke. Like legitimately, like
No, that's actually what it is. That's basically what it's become. It doesn't really matter in baseball. Maybe in football, maybe in basketball. Yeah, of course it
but
matters.
even basketball is weird, bro, because it's not the NBA Hall of Fame, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it
It'll be
is.
like Michael Jordan, and then a random dude from a European league. Like what?
Yeah, 100%. So
But yeah, that's the problem. Is there's so many inconsistencies in it. But in terms of Tatis making the Hall of Fame, it's like not really a chance now. Like in all honesty, unless the Hall of Fame completely adjusts in 15, 20 years or 25 years or whenever he's up for it. If he gets to the point where he's up to be, inducted into the Hall of Fame. But I don't think that he's really going to have a chance. But I also, like you said,
I don't. Yeah,
we've seen it. We've talked about it before. Like when
I do think it's a joke. And when I mean, luckily for him, he's going to be 24 by the start of next season. I mean, if he plays long enough, maybe the bias could take over in some sense. Maybe he could get lucky, but I mean, one time, maybe, because we don't know how far the MLB or how far whatever it can go in the future. Like, in reality, there's still a bunch of old dudes in the voting for the Hall of Fame, and obviously they're not going to be in favor of what Fernando did. I mean, they're still not in favor of what Barry Bonds did, and it might be the same voters down the road, but yeah, I think he'll be fine. Bringing championship to San Diego, that's all. That's all I care about. That is all I care about, and that's it. You're gonna be remembered. It's like you don't really need a bust or whatever in baseball to be remembered amongst some of the best. Who cares?
Yeah, and like that's why it's so weird too. Like, because also like that's the other thing with the Hall of Fame too is like the degrees of what kind of steroids people were taking and like what the differences are. Like Tatis taking in recovery too is like a little bit different, I think. Now we'll see his numbers post steroids and stuff to like be able to talk about that once it happens. But I still don't think there's a chance, which sucks. But I definitely think that, looking at it, he's probably not going to make it. But at the end of the day, what's the thing that matters? Winning, being a star player. Like there's a lot of guys that are in the Hall of Fame for reasons that a lot of people think are stupid. There's a lot of guys that were blatant cheaters that are in the Hall of Fame. In like the 20s, 30s, guys, teams were using corked bats. Full teams were using corked bats.
Yeah,
that might be a little bit of an advantage. I don't know. I'm just going to put that one out there. But all those guys made it into the Hall of Fame. So it happens a lot. So, but yeah, it's definitely something like whenever you get busted for steroids, especially in baseball, like only in baseball too. That's the other thing. In other sports, like it doesn't. Bro, DeAndre Hopkins got suspended for steroids half the season for steroids, right? Do you know what the backlash was? Damn those stupid ass trainers! What are they doing? What did they put in his medicine in the stuff he's taken? Like it wasn't like the same thing. It's really interesting, but that's kind of because of what's happened in the past in baseball, where the steroid era was such a big deal. So it does make sense in that regard, but it's just the inconsistencies of the Hall of Fame and all that stuff where it's like, does it really matter? It definitely matters to the players. It definitely matters for legacy. It definitely matters for a lot of that. But for the fans, like, I don't know. Not for me at least. But I don't know. I guess. Tatis's rookie cards took a plummet.
I can imagine.
I'm gonna be sniping those. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Yeah. I don't know you're gonna save them until the end of his career anyway. It's not like it really matters.